Would you ever tell coworkers what you make?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you what I make.
Okay, everybody, you heard it here first. Jen's about to tell you how much money she makes.
Hi, I'm Jen.
And I'm Gina.
And this is Job Search Stories. Today, we're going to be diving into controversies around pay and salary.
Okay, so money. We both don't like talking about it. We say this all the time on this podcast. It makes us a little uncomfy, but I think we are learning to get past it. So we're going to help y'all get past it too. We have a viewer question. Our friend Olivia wrote, how can I tell if I'm being paid fairly, or should I ask for more?
Yeah, it's a hard question. And it's one that I ask myself probably every 3 to 4 months. Right? Yeah. We got to do some self-assessments and check-ins every once in a while.
When I ask myself that, I'm always like, is this worth it? Am I supposed to be working? Was I meant for this life? But then I get over that, I'm like, okay, I like working.
Then you got to pay rent and you're like, oh no, I've got to work.
I like having a life to live. Yeah. Right. I think that's a great segue into something that I really want to talk to you about, which is salary transparency. That is a hot topic when it comes to salary. How do you feel about discussing salary, whether that's in negotiation, whether that's in the workplace with colleagues, with friends? How do you feel about it?
Salary can feel like a very taboo topic, right? Like it's icky or uncouth to talk about how much money you make. But I personally have no problem talking about it. That's kind of the basis or one of the components of my job. So I typically wait for somebody else to initiate the conversation. But I also think it's important to note that a lack of salary transparency can also prevent people from applying for opportunities. So it's not even when they're there or already in a role or getting that offer. If a salary is not disclosed, they might not even click to apply. And it's really interesting because in the Indeed 2024 Workforce Insights Report, more than 1/3 of workers said that a lack of specified salary ranges is a deterrent for applying to jobs.
Yeah, you need to know how much you're worth. And also your pay has to reflect that, because if it doesn't align with your bills and your lifestyle, then why are you going to even go and apply for that job? Like, it doesn't make sense.
You don't want to wait until the offer comes in to find out that they can't even pay you what you need to make.
We need money.
We got to make money.
Do you think people should discuss salary in the workplace?
Discussing salary in the workplace is a personal decision. So it's really important for you to become familiar with your state's salary transparency laws. And so I'm not an employment lawyer, but you can go online and look and see what your state's salary transparency laws are.
I don't know. I feel a little icky maybe about like states or certain workplaces telling people they can't talk about salary, because I really think that's the only way that some people feel like they can advocate for themselves. I know that like we talk about this a lot. We have some of our favorite shows that are similar. And there's a lot of shows where like people find out that they're not being paid fairly by like stumbling across a coworker's paycheck and things like that. So I think it's like, if we aren't allowed to talk about it, how are we supposed to know like if we're actually getting paid what we deserve? So would you ever tell coworkers what you make? I mean, I'm your coworker. Would you ever tell me what you make? I'm not telling you to tell me on camera. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Don't know what I make? I'll tell you. I'll tell you what I make.
Okay, everybody, you heard it here first. Jen's about to tell you how much money she makes.
I mean, I honestly have no problem telling people what I make. I would want to know you're comfortable having a conversation about salary.
Okay.
And so when you discuss salary, it comes with a lot of caveats. So it's not just, oh, we have the same job title. You're making this, I'm making that. Why is that, right? So many different things come into play. We work for a company that has RSUs. We have stocks. Those are different values. Those come into play when it comes into total compensation. There was one survey by Indeed that showed that 63% of people have never talked about salary in the workplace. So not everybody's comfortable discussing it.
I think you made a good point about comfortability. Like, I'm not just going to walk up to somebody and be like, tell me how much money you make. Tell me what you make. I want to know your salary. Like it really is like time and place. And also like if someone is really in a tough spot, I want to help somebody out. Like if they're really like, I really don't feel like I'm making the money that I deserve to make, I will go to bat for them. Like I will be like, this is what I make. This is, like, I really think it depends. Like, I think in the workplace, there's like a lot of different reasons why someone would need to know how much you make. And a lot of times I feel like it's to advocate for themselves. So I think it really just depends. What should somebody do if they discover that there's a huge pay range difference between them and a colleague?
The first thing that I would suggest is to assume positive intent. I wouldn't assume that there's a disparity because I'm being discriminated against or something like that. Ask questions. So get as much information as you can, and take note of things like those caveats we talked about. How long you've been at the company, even if you're comparing your salary to somebody else's, their tenure, look at things like your years of experience, kind of build your case to say, this is why I think I should be making more, or here's where I'm at. I want to understand why there's a disparity. Then you want to initiate a private conversation with either your manager or with a human resources representative. And when you approach it, it's best not to even bring the other person into the conversation. This is really a conversation about you and what you make. So you want to have that detailed case and you want to present it to them and you want to give them the opportunity to investigate it and see, what they can come up with. And if you find that there's not necessarily a good reason for why you're not making what some of the other people are making, then you can build your case and state what salary you would be looking for, which one you think is fair for what you should make, and present it to them and ask for a salary review.
I like that. I like the tip about not making it about the other person, because at the end of the day, if you find this out, you should really go through the necessary steps. And then if you really feel like you deserve more money, then make it about you and then you can move on, because the other person didn't do anything. They're just making their money. And maybe they did other things during that salary negotiation that you didn't.
Maybe they had a salary negotiation and you didn't.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that's a great thing that a lot of people probably don't do. You gave good tips on salary negotiation, but we really want to know, our viewers at home who are watching on YouTube, have you ever asked a coworker how much they make? Would you ever ask a coworker how much they make? Let us know in the comments down below. We would love to hear from you. Another huge thing around pay gaps. It's real. It happens. There's a lot of practices that still happen today that people just don't really want to talk about.
Yeah.
They kind of want to dance around it. But have you ever experienced a wage gap that you've known of?
Yeah, absolutely. I found myself in a position where I was relatively new to a company. Within 3 months, I interviewed for a promotion, got the promotion, which was great. I ended up jumping 2 kind of rungs up the ladder. But with that, there was a limit to how much of an increase I could receive. So even though I had kind of moved 2 spaces up, I could only get an increase reflective of 1 promotion. And so that put me well below what other people at that new title were actually making.
That doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, it really stunk.
Yeah. I mean, I think that obviously we talk about different companies in different states, but finding out that I essentially had the same job as somebody at a different company and finding out that they were of a different gender and we did the same job and they made a lot more money than me it was a sting. It was a sting. Same age, same education, same college. We literally had the same exact track, and just finding that out, that hurt a little bit.
It doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. And, there was not much I could do, but I was okay, I got to make a change for myself so that I can, get paid what I deserve. So I took your advice about job hopping. Yeah. So, sometimes you give me good advice. You give everybody good advice, but sometimes you give me really good advice.
I give you great advice. You just don't always take it.
Because I'm stubborn. Anyways, okay, for those who don't know, the people listening, the people watching, what are pay gaps?
So pay gaps refer to a disparity in earnings between different groups of individuals. So essentially, it reflects unequal compensation for similar work or roles within a company.
That's it?
That's it. That's what a pay gap is.
Are there specific types of pay gaps that job seekers should be looking out for?
Sure. So there are actually a number of different pay gaps, but some of the most common would be pay gaps in gender, race, and age. So I'm going to give you some stats here because I think it's really illuminating, and I think these are stats that people should know. So when we talk about gender wage gaps, the fact is that according to the Department of Labor, women make almost 84 cents on the dollar for what a man makes, which is a difference of about $10,000 per year. Then there are gaps due to race. Latinas are actually the most underpaid demographic, earning just 57 cents for every dollar that a white non-Hispanic man makes and 69 cents for every dollar that a white woman makes. Then there are gaps due to age. There's one report that says there's a 22% pay gap between men and women ages 55 to 64, with men earning more.
That's a lot. And I feel like I get why job seekers could be frustrated. And I feel like a lot of that could feel out of someone's control.
Yeah, I'm a Latina. I'm in the most underpaid demographic. Yeah. So yeah, when you hear the numbers, it can feel. I can feel the feelings, and I'm sure you feel feelings too.
I feel the feelings for you. You feel the feelings for me.
Feelings are felt.
It could feel out of somebody's control, but I feel like you have some tips. How can job seekers work to close the pay gap? I know it's not all up to them, right, but what can they do?
To close the pay gap, it really starts at the job offer stage, negotiating that salary. And again, you can negotiate promotions too, but just having that initial conversation about wages when you're coming into a company, that can make a big difference. We talk about salary transparency. Just having these conversations when you can with your coworkers will allow you to identify when there are pay gaps. And again, we want to assume positive intent, but it can at least give you what you need to start a conversation and just ask, hey, why is there a discrepancy between what I make when I'm in the same role and I have very similar experience? Indeed actually had an experiment called Dare to Share that is so powerful in my opinion. We actually show this video in the salary workshop that I give, where they ran this experiment where they did these Zoom interviews and they interviewed men and women in the same role, in the same location, with the same years of experience, same skill set. And they started to ask them how much money they make. Do you make 100,000? Do you make 90? As people got to a salary where they make less and less, and you see who's making $40,000 when everybody else is making 100, who's left in the group? Women of color, people in, specific demographics. And that's where you can really feel it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that I've been in that situation where you really feel like, oh man, I'm at the bottom of the ladder here.
It's hard when you literally don't know what to do. Like you don't know how to negotiate salary and you don't know that you're allowed to negotiate a job offer. Like you just don't know. And that's why I feel like we have so many good resources and you have given so many great tips for people to know that there is an option to negotiate that salary, negotiate that job offer so you can be your best advocate, because no one's going to advocate for you like you're going to advocate for you.
You're so right.
Thanks for saying that. That's nice. Switching gears a little bit, it's all still going to be about money, but this is about the lack of money, the $0 and the 0 cents. Have you ever had an unpaid internship?
I've never had an unpaid internship, but when I did work in higher education, I worked with communication students. So these are advertising, PR, radio, television, and film, public relations. And so unpaid internships are very much the norm for students of those majors.
Yeah, I had some unpaid internships. I did not like them. If I could go back, I would not have done them. Only because I was a student who had to also work while I was in school, and I was leaving school early to get to said unpaid internships and then also working because I had to pay bills. And I just think that it's kind of unfortunate that certain majors, especially knowing that they're not majors where you're going to be making a lot of money once you graduate, there's kind of this free labor that is kind of, to me, taking advantage of more low income or students who aren't going to be making as much money after graduation. So if I could go back, I probably wouldn't have done the unpaid internships and I would have just waited a little bit to do the paid ones. But sometimes you don't have a choice. If you were like me, little 18-year-old Gina, what is the difference between a paid and an unpaid internship?
I mean, ultimately it comes down to money, right? But with any internship, whether it's paid or unpaid, it should be tied to your academic program. So typically what you'll see with unpaid internships is that in exchange for the work, you might be receiving academic credit. So the company is willing to work with the university to make sure that you're getting some type of compensation for the work that you're doing. You might also find that the level of work will be different. So you wouldn't necessarily be doing the work of a paid employee. You're going to have a lot more mentorship, more supervision. You also should not be supplying your own laptops, equipment. That should really be provided by the companies.
Yeah, I would say one of my unpaid internships, no supervision, no mentorship. I was doing a lot of work, but I think there's just there's levels to it. So that leads me to another great question that I really want your opinion on. Do you think unpaid internships are scams?
I do not think unpaid internships are scams, but I do think interns should be paid. So when they're executed correctly and a student is learning and really gaining some valuable experience, there's an exchange, right? Both the employer and the student are benefiting from the situation. But when companies hire unpaid interns to do the work of a paid employee and the student is not getting the supervision and they are having to supply their equipment, well, then the company isn't holding up their end of the bargain, and that is unethical.
Right. So I think it's not a scam when there's that type of regulation. Like you're saying, it's if I'm going to get the college credit, you basically should be teaching me something.
Absolutely.
Because it's a college credit.
It's an educational experience.
Exactly. Who is an unpaid internship best for?
So whether or not you take an unpaid internship is really a personal decision. You've got to weigh the benefits of the opportunity. If you know you're going to be working with a great mentor, a great supervisor, you're going to get access to some really great opportunities. And even if it's the norm in your industry, if you're interning in nonprofit, it's pretty common for those to be unpaid. So if you're examining the opportunity in front of you and you're seeing all of the value that you could be getting, in addition to things like college credit, that could be a good reason for you to take that unpaid opportunity.
Amazing. Everybody do what's best for them. Okay. We talked about a lot of things about money, and I think hopefully this helped some people, but I really want to help Alifia. That's who I'm worried about this episode. So going back to her question, how can you make sure that you're being paid fairly? And how should you ask for more if you find out you're not being paid fairly?
Sure. To know if you're being paid fairly all starts with research. You should be not only researching what salaries are within your company, but within your industry, and really looking at comparisons between what people at your level of experience and with your skill set are making. And if you find that there is a discrepancy, that's when you want to have a professional but private conversation with your manager or with human resources. You want to have all of that research to build a strong case. Assume positive intent, but don't be afraid to ask for more if you find that you should be making more.
Beautiful. That was quick, succinct. And also, I feel like the word of the day for today, just like the other days, was advocate. Advocate for yourself. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Job Search Stories. If you want even more episodes of Job Search Stories, you have to make sure to subscribe to Indeed's YouTube channel and leave us a little comment, show us some love. You know you want to. Bye.
Bye.
People have really be they be doing that. You are like me and you didn't know the difference. Are you okay?
I have to shift. I put too much pressure right here real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, take your time.
Shift. Gina!